Welcome to the Deep Dive. Ready to explore some seriously mind-bending ideas about the human brain and consciousness.
Absolutely. And get this, we're going to be taking our cues from a Japanese bestseller about something called right brain awakening.
Okay, right off the bat, Japanese bestseller and Right Brain Awakening. I'm already hooked.
Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the author is a housewife who experienced this, radical shift in her own consciousness.
Whoa, so we're not talking about some, neuroscientist or spiritual guru.
Nope, just a regular middle-aged Japanese housewife. Goes by the name Milkhead June online, calls herself Okasan, which means mother in Japanese.
Milkhead Gin. Okay, I love it. So what exactly is this deep dive going to cover? Right Brain Awakening, but what does that even mean?
Well, that's what we're going to unpack. The core concepts, how it contrasts with our, left brain heavy world, and what potential benefits and even challenges could be.
Sounds like a trip. But first, let's get some background. Who is this author? What led her to write this book?
All right, so picture this. Pretty standard family life. Her child is just entering adulthood. Husband works a regular job. Nothing mystical on the surface.
Okay, a regular mom writing about consciousness. That's interesting. So what happened? What was the catalyst for this shift?
So 7 years ago, she's working at her computer, just a normal day, right? And then out of nowhere, the inner voice in her head just gone. Poof.
Wait, just like that. Gone.
Yeah. And at the same time, everything around her just started to sparkle. The world became so vivid, beautiful, and this incredible feeling of peace and happiness washed over her.
Wow. I mean, it makes you wonder if we're all just missing out on something by, constantly overthinking everything.
Right.
Was there anything in her past that, hinted at this kind of experience?
Well, she did have a pretty intense experience in her late 20s. Severe heart palpitations. She was constantly afraid she was going to have a heart attack.
Oh, wow. I can only imagine how scary that must have been.
Absolutely. So this led her to explore psychology, stress management, anything that might help.
Makes sense. When something like that happens, you'd try anything.
Right. So she ended up meeting this psychologist who had a very unique perspective.
Yeah.
He believed that negative emotions could actually be stored in your cells, causing muscle tension that eventually shows up as physical symptoms, like her heart palpitations.
Interesting. So almost like a mind-body connection.
Exactly. And his solution, physical relaxation techniques to release that emotional tension, things like exercise.
So she was dealing with a psychological issue through physical means.
Fascinating. Did it work?
It did. She says it completely cured her heart palpitations. And years later, it's almost like that experience with her physical body somehow prepared her for this, major consciousness shift.
Okay, so we have a housewife with a sudden awakening and a history of approaching things a little differently. But to understand right brain awakening, let's get back to basics. Left brain versus right brain. Can you break that down? Okay, so think of it this way. Your left brain is like the analytical CEO of your mind. Language, logic, breaking things down, making decisions, thrives in our modern world.
Makes sense. And the right brain.
That's the creative artist. Sees the world in images, feelings, recognizes patterns, makes connections the left brain might miss, big picture stuff.
And I'm guessing our modern society is pretty much obsessed with the left brain. School, work, technology, it's all about analysis and information. What exactly is this author saying happened to her?
So she believes that human consciousness actually resides in one side of the brain or the other, and for her, it shifted to the right, resulted in this sudden loss of language and logical thought.
Whoa, okay. So no more overthinking.
Well, not exactly. With that loss came this heightened awareness of her senses, a deep feeling of oneness with, everything around her.
So it's like trading constant analysis for pure experience.
Yeah. But she describes it as this constant tug of war. Even as she was in this new state, her left brain was trying to pull her back to its way of thinking.
Wow, that internal struggle must have been wild, like having two totally different personalities in your head.
Right. But wait, it gets even more interesting. She talks about this concept of the collective unconscious and the phenomenon of synchronicity.
Okay, now we're going deep. Break those down for us. What are those?
So imagine this vast, invisible network connecting the minds of every human being. That's the collective unconscious, a theory by Carl Jung, and it suggests we all tap into this shared pool of, thoughts and emotions.
Whoa, like a giant internet, but for our minds.
Exactly. And the author believes that it's through the right brain we can access this collective unconscious, which leads to synchronicity.
Which is?
Those meaningful coincidences that seem to defy logic.
Like when you think of someone, they call you out of the blue.
Exactly. Ever experienced something like that? felt like more than coincidence.
Oh, absolutely. I think most people have. So what does she say are the benefits of this right brain awakening? It sounds cool, but is there more to it than just feeling connected?
Well, she makes a bold claim. Right brain awakening can lead to deep happiness and fulfillment, living fully in the present moment, no dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, experiencing the world through your senses.
Sounds like a pretty amazing way to live.
Yeah.
What about this whole manifesting your desires thing? Is that part of it?
Yes, but with a twist. She believes it's only through right brain consciousness, with its present moment focus and connection to the collective unconscious, that the law of attraction really works.
So it's not just wishing and waiting.
Right, aligning your thoughts, feelings, and actions with your goals. But she also says it's best to focus on those immediate, attainable goals, not like far off dreams. Start small, build momentum.
Okay, that makes more sense. So not becoming a millionaire overnight, but maybe attracting a new client or finally finishing that project you've been putting off.
Exactly. It's about taking inspired action, being open to opportunities, and trusting that, the universe will meet you halfway. But here's the thing. This path isn't always a walk in the park. She warns that there can be some challenges.
Challenges like? You mean besides our left brain trying to take back control?
Well, that's definitely one. She warns that the left brain will resist any attempts at right brain awakening. It's like a part of us that's afraid of losing control, venturing into the unknown.
So how do we navigate that? How do we quiet the left brain and embrace this new way of being?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something we'll dig into as we continue this deep dive, so stay tuned.
It's wild, right? How ingrained that left brain way of thinking is.
Hmm.
Analyze, plan, worry about the future. It's like we're programmed for it.
It's true. Always chasing something just out of reach, but how do we shift that balance if there's no magic button to switch to, like right brain mode?
Well, the author really emphasizes that it's a process. It's a journey. You have to unlearn old habits and really truly embrace a new way of being. It takes patience, persistence, and even courage to trust your intuition.
So consciously tuning out that mental chatter and like tapping into the wisdom of the right brain. But how? How do we actually DO that? One of the most important things is just becoming aware of your internal dialogue. Notice how often your thoughts are stuck in the past, like rehashing regrets or projecting anxieties into the future.
Mindfulness, right? Paying attention to our breath, our senses, the present moment.
Exactly. And she also talks about spending time in nature, being surrounded by trees, water, fresh air. It really calms your nervous system, helps you connect with those natural rhythms of life.
Huge believer in that. Nothing like a hike in the woods to clear your head. But what about those challenges we talked about earlier? The left brain fighting back, clashing with what society expects of us. That's got to be tough.
It's important to remember that the left brain isn't the enemy. It's a valuable tool. But like any tool, you have to use it the right way. You wouldn't use a screwdriver to paint a masterpiece, right?
Right. So finding that balance, logic and analysis when needed, but not letting them rule our lives.
Precisely. And that's where self-compassion comes in. You're going to slip back into those old thought patterns sometimes, and that's okay. Just notice it and gently redirect your attention back to the present.
Easier said than done, but it makes sense, like building a new mental muscle.
Hmm.
But what about societal expectations? What if your intuition takes you off the beaten path?
You don't have to conform to anyone else's definition of success or happiness. If trusting your gut leads you somewhere a little unconventional, that's okay. In fact, it might be exactly where you're supposed to be.
I love that. Giving yourself permission to break free and create a life that's truly yours. But, okay, I'll be honest, I'm still kind of skeptical about this whole manifesting your desires thing.
Yeah.
Is it really as easy as, like, positive thoughts and boom, your dream life appears?
The author definitely believes in manifestation, but she emphasizes that it's not just passive wishing. You have to align your thoughts, feelings, and actions with what you want.
So more about taking action, being open to opportunity, not just visualizing a pile of money on your couch.
Exactly. Taking those small, consistent steps, trusting the process, and she says focusing on those immediate, tangible goals is key to the law of attraction working.
So instead of world domination, maybe start with planting that garden or cleaning out the garage. Baby steps.
Exactly. Build that momentum. Now let's shift gears a bit. The author also talks about this sudden surge in creativity she experienced, almost like her right brain was downloading information from somewhere.
Yeah, that was wild. Like she tapped into a hidden source of knowledge. Is that something we can all access?
Great question. And it leads us to one of the most fascinating things she explores. The idea that by quieting the left brain and activating the right, we can tap into this vast wellspring of information. She calls it the collective unconscious.
But how do we know if we're tapping into real intuition or just random thoughts?
That's where discernment comes in. The author says to pay attention to how those insights feel. Are they expansive, aligned with your best self? Or are they like constricted, fear-based, not in line with your values?
So it's about tuning into our gut feeling, that inner knowing. What about synchronicities? Just random events or something more?
The author sees them as messages from the universe. Guideposts, little nudges, confirmations you're on the right track.
So like a secret code, we got to crack it to understand.
It's definitely a different way of looking at things. Instead of dismissing coincidences, view them as meaningful synchronicities guiding you toward your full potential. Okay, we've covered mindfulness, nature, intuition, manifestation, synchronicities, a lot to take in. But is this right brain awakening something everyone should strive for? Are there downsides? That's a great question. And yes, the author addresses that. She acknowledges that right brain dominance comes with its own challenges.
Turning into a hermit artist who can't hold a job.
Not necessarily, but the right brain isn't bound by logic the way the left brain is. It's more intuitive, emotional, free-flowing, liberating, but it can lead to bumps in the road.
Like making impulsive decisions, getting swept up in emotions.
Could happen.
Mm.
She also warns that the left brain will fight back. It's like a part of us that's scared of losing control, of the unknown.
So it's this constant dance between the logical mind and the intuitive heart.
Exactly. And it can feel chaotic at times. You might feel anxious, have self-doubt, struggle to decide, feel overwhelmed, even question your sanity a bit.
Okay, that sounds a little intense. How do we navigate that without, losing it?
She stresses self-compassion and patience. It's a journey, not a destination. There will be highs and lows, clarity and confusion. Trust the process. Be kind to yourself.
With learning to walk again.
Yeah.
You stumble, you fall, but eventually you find your balance.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't about rejecting the left brain. It's about finding harmony between the two. We need logic, A and D intuition to navigate this world.
Partnership, not a rivalry. Each side brings something to the table. But let's be real. Not everyone's going to have a life-altering experience like the author. Is there still value in this even without a full-blown right brain awakening?
Absolutely. Even without a huge shift, you can still benefit from cultivating more right brain awareness.
So becoming more creative, more in tune with our gut, more connected to ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. Practices like mindfulness, meditation, spending time in nature, they all quiet the left brain and let you tune into the right.
So it's about slowing down, listening to our inner voice, trusting our gut, embracing the mystery and magic of life.
Beautifully put. You know, what really struck me was how the author described feeling connected to this vast network of knowledge, like downloading information from the universe.
Yeah, that was mind-blowing. Like she tapped into this creative and inspirational source.
Exactly. And while it might sound far-fetched, there are actually scientific theories that might back this up.
Like what? Quantum entanglement.
Maybe? But one that really grabbed me is the zero-point field.
Okay, lay it on me. What's that?
In quantum physics, it's this boundless energy that exists at the most fundamental level of reality. Pure potentiality, where all possibilities exist at once.
Like a cosmic blueprint for everything.
Exactly. And some physicists believe our consciousness can actually interact with it, drawing on its wisdom and creativity.
Okay, now we're getting deep. But bringing it back to everyday life. If this right brain awakening is so great, why aren't we all talking about it?
That's the question, isn't it? And it brings us back to that left brain dominance in our society.
How we value logic, analysis, productivity over everything else.
Yeah.
No time for introspection.
Exactly. Our world keeps our left brains busy, distracting us from deeper truths.
So how do we break free? Unlock that right brain power?
The author says, recognize the imbalance. See how much time you spend on those left brain activities and make a conscious effort to do more right brain stuff.
Like being in nature, listening to music,
Yeah.
creating art.
Exactly. Find activities that bring you joy, spark your intuition, connect you to something bigger.
But what about those mental blocks? The fears that pop up when we try new things.
Self-compassion and perseverance. Those fears are normal, but don't let them stop you. Acknowledge them and keep going.
Like building a muscle.
Yeah.
The more we practice trusting our gut, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone. There are so many resources out there to help: books, podcasts, workshops, tons of information if you want to explore this.
That's encouraging. So it's not about becoming some mystic, but about balancing those two sides of our brain.
Mm,
using both logic and intuition to navigate life and find meaning.
beautifully said. It makes you wonder, what would the world be like if we all embraced this? If we valued creativity and intuition as much as logic? If we focused on compassion and connection as much as competition?
A world where art and science work together, logic and intuition create understanding, where the left brain and the right brain create a more harmonious society.
It's a world worth working towards, right? And maybe
Mhm.
this right brain awakening is just the start of a much bigger shift for humanity?
A shift toward a more holistic, intuitive, and connected way of being, embracing both our individuality and our interconnectedness, the logical and the magical. Recognizing that true happiness isn't about external achievements, but something deeper. It really does feel like there's this whole other level of experience just waiting to be unlocked. But if we're talking about this shift in consciousness, this right brain awakening, how do we actually access that? What are the practical steps?
Well, the author doesn't lay out some, step-by-step formula. It's not a recipe you can just follow, but
Mhm.
she emphasizes that it's all about cultivating awareness. You start by paying attention to the thoughts that are just constantly running through your mind. Are they focused on the past, on regrets, worries, or maybe projecting anxieties into the future?
So first, we just notice those patterns without judging ourselves.
Exactly. And then gently guide your attention back to the present moment. That's where the right brain really comes alive. In the sights, the sounds, the sensations of right now.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. But it sounds like kind of a constant battle, doesn't it? Our left brains are so dominant, so ingrained in everything we do. How do we even start to quiet all that mental chatter?
Well, the author suggests a few different techniques. One of the simplest but often most powerful is spending time in nature. Have you ever noticed how just a walk in the woods or a day at the beach can just melt away stress? You feel refreshed, renewed.
Absolutely. Nature is like a reset button for the mind.
Right, and that's because nature speaks the language of the right brain. It's all about sensory experience, connection, being present.
It's like hitting pause on all that overthinking
Yeah.
and just allowing ourselves to be.
Exactly. And when we create space for that stillness, for that right brain awareness, that's when intuition can really start to flow.
So it's not about forcing insights or trying to make things happen, but creating the conditions for them to naturally emerge.
Exactly. The author believes the right brain is naturally connected to this deeper source of wisdom. She calls it the collective unconscious, this network of knowledge, inspiration that we can all tap into.
It's like we have this amazing internal GPS, but we're so busy looking at directions on our phones that we forget to listen to our own guidance.
I love that. And the more we tune into that inner voice, the more we start to notice those synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem like more than just chance.
So how do we know if it's really a synchronicity, or are we just reading too much into things?
Pay attention to how it feels. Does it feel significant? Does it give you a sense of awe, wonder? Does it align with your deepest desires, your intuition?
So it's not just the external event, but that internal resonance, the way it feels in your gut.
Yes, it's like your soul is saying, pay attention, this is important.
I love that. So is this right brain awakening something that everyone experiences the same way? Or is it more of a gradual thing?
Well, the author's experience was definitely dramatic, but she admits it's not always like that, a sudden transformation. For a lot of people, it's a gradual unfolding, a subtle shift in awareness over time.
So not like flipping a switch, more like slowly turning up the volume on a radio station you've always had, but never really tuned into.
Perfect analogy. And like any skill, it takes practice. The more we engage those right brain muscles, the easier it becomes to tap into that intuitive awareness.
So what can we do to strengthen those right brain muscles?
Well, besides spending time in nature, she recommends activities that engage your senses, that get your creative juices flowing. Things like listening to music, dancing, painting, writing, even cooking. Anything that helps you express yourself, connect with that intuitive flow.
So it's about giving ourselves permission to play, to be curious, to explore without judgment.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment. It's about the journey, the ups and downs, the moments of clarity and confusion, trusting the process, being kind to yourself along the way.
This has been such a mind-expanding conversation. It feels like we've only scratched the surface of this right brain awakening idea. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Even if you don't have a sudden, dramatic shift in consciousness, you can still benefit from these principles. Even small changes, being more mindful, spending time in nature, getting creative, can make a huge difference in your life.
It's about making choices that nourish our right brains, that create space for intuition, creativity, and connection. It's remembering there's more to life than logic, that true happiness often comes from those unexpected, intuitive, magical moments that happen when we just allow ourselves to be. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the right brain. Until next time, keep exploring, keep trusting your gut, and keep diving deep.